I've always been fascinated by the paranormal, because on the one hand, unexplained phenomena seem to be the stuff of great fantasy stories and films, and on the other hand, so many people say that they've actually had psychic experiences. They can't all be deluded, can they? And what about the spooky goings-on that people talk about every day? Like when we feel stared at from behind, or when we think about someone just before they phone us, or when dogs know that their owner is coming home unexpectedly. I'm about as sensitive to these things as a pair of wellies, and I don't have a dog. But I'm an open-minded skeptic. So, in the tradition of scientific inquiry, I asked the general public in my local shopping centre. Excuse me, we're doing a programme for ITV about the sense of being stared at. Do you ever get the feeling that you're being stared at from behind and then turn around and find somebody doing?
Yeah.
Do you get a sensation, or...?
I guess it's just more of an awareness.
I can just tell sometimes when someone's staring at me. And I think that if you look at someone for long enough, maybe from across the room, they'll eventually look over in your direction.
But I don't know whether it's a sensation as such or whether I just happen to look over at them and they're staring at me.
Have you ever had anything like that?
Oh, yeah, it's paranoia, isn't it? Sometimes you can feel it, can't you, in the back of your head?
You can feel there's like an atmosphere behind you.
It just feels like a pressure behind you. Your head goes hot sometimes.
Is it a tingle, a heat, a pressure?
No, it's just a sense. It's not like a physical feeling, it's more of a mental thing.
They know when they're being stared at. If so many people experience these phenomena, couldn't this tell us something meaningful about human nature? So why is no one researching them? Step forward maverick scientist Dr. Rupert Sheldrake.
Just because lots of people believe in something, of course it doesn't prove it's true, but on the other hand it doesn't prove it's false. If most people have noticed that they can tell when they're being stared at by others, why should anyone assume they're wrong? I mean, why not find out if they're right?
In his latest book, The Sense of Being Stared At, Dr. Sheldrake lays out his theories about what he calls our extended mind.
The standard view of the mind is that the mind is the brain. Mental activity is brain activity. It's all inside the head. I don't think the mind's like that at all. Of course, it's related to the brain, but I think it stretches out beyond the head, just like a magnetic field stretches out beyond a magnet. The easiest way to see how the mind's extended beyond the brain is through thinking about vision. When we look at something, in a sense our mind touches what we're looking at. We can shift our attention, and the direction of our mind, the projection, shifts. There's a whole range of phenomena which science can't understand at present, which makes sense if the mind isn't all crammed inside the head.
If all this sounds a little far-fetched, Sheldrake says he can prove his theories by conducting experiments. But what are these experiments like? I went with the crew to visit Dr. Sheldrake at his home in Hampstead to find out.
Are you going to be the subject?
Yeah, I'll be the subject.
Okay. Well, we need to have you sitting in a chair with your back to the starer, that could be me, distance at least 2 yards, wearing a blindfold. For that, we'll need the blindfold and we'll need a clicking device that gives you a signal of when the trial begins. I have to go and get those.
Okay.
You know, if we wanted to be part of the real cutting edge of this research, we could do an experiment where I stare at you through a mirror. There's a big mirror here.
Yeah, this is a good mirror.
I could sit here.
Yeah.
You could sit there. We won't get a conclusive result, even if you're a brilliant subject at this, because it's a statistical test and you have to do it lots of times.
Yes.
We won't get enough data unless you're prepared to stay here for several days.
No, I've got a life.
Yes.
And you have too, actually.
Yes.
If you look away towards the camera, maybe.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
I'll take my glasses off now.
Put on the blindfold. So, you ready,
Yep.
Chess?
I'm ready.
Okay. Well, when you hear the click, the trial begins, and then try and respond within a few seconds, not more than 10 seconds.
Okay. Looking. Not looking.
I've done a whole series of different experiments. If we take the sense of being stared at, first there's these straightforward staring tests. Then there's a computerized version of that test. There are tests involving photographs. Instead of staring at someone, you look at their photo. Other people have done closed-circuit television tests. I'd very much like to do a live television version of that test. Are people affected by being seen live on TV by millions of people? What you have to show is that there's something going on. It may not be very strong in the experiment, but as long as there's something happening that's above chance and can't be explained any other way, then you've got a phenomenon. So that's it. So you completed all 20 trials.
Guys, you can come out.
And
Have your hidey hole.
so your total score is 10 out of 20, the chance level.
Okay.
Suddenly you got into it, and you couldn't go wrong during this period, and then you sort of lost it again.
That's very sounds like me.
Well, I think experiments are fun, you know.
Yeah.
If I thought experiments were boring, I probably wouldn't have become a scientist. I get excited because I like the idea that simple experiments can tell us something we don't already know, and what's more, can have something that can be potentially repeatable by other people.
Yeah.
And science is based on experiments and then repetition and building up a consensus. When I was doing research in agriculture in India, I'd spend all day working in the fields doing hands-on experiments. And then in my free time I was thinking about the theory.
Dr. Sheldrake's early career was as a respected plant biologist. A Cambridge fellow, he went on to become a crop researcher in India. In the fields near Hyderabad, Sheldrake came up with a theory that was to change his life. He believes that every living organism is surrounded by a morphic field, a kind of blueprint which shapes the organism as it grows and influences both conscious behaviour and instinct. But he goes further still. Social groups like families or football teams have morphic fields too, and as individuals learn and change, so the whole group is affected by an unconscious process, morphic resonance. Could this explain many of the mysteries of science, like telepathy and the paranormal? In 1981, Sheldrake published his ideas as A New Science of Life, but science was far from impressed. At best, the science establishment saw him as a scientist who'd gone wayward. At worst, he was a complete heretic.
This savage attack, a front-page editorial in Nature called A Book for Burning, basically proclaimed this book something beyond the scientific pale and essentially condemned me as a kind of heretic. This led to a huge amount of publicity, far beyond what I'd expected or hoped for. And of course, the first edition of the book sold out within a few weeks. The downside of this was that it meant that I became notorious in the scientific world. So this meant that it was hard from then on to get space in labs to do experiments. It certainly meant I couldn't get another job in the scientific world.
Did you try and get jobs?
No, I didn't even try to get jobs. I felt if I had to go out on my own and try blazing a trail on my own, then that's what I had to do. After all, what is heresy? It's a different way of looking at the way things can be done. Heretics are often the innovators.
Ignored, exiled and ridiculed by the mainstream of science, Sheldrake found an eager audience on the fringes, in alternative religious and New Age circles. But he wanted to reach a wider audience, the amateur scientist inside all of us.
And that's when I hit on this idea of popular participation in science. Experiments that are relatively easy to understand, cheap and simple to do, in which anyone can take part. There was an enormous amount of interest, especially in unexplained powers of animals, particularly dogs that know when their owners are coming home. I started getting letters from people, dozens of letters, then hundreds of letters with stories about what their pets did. When I did the tests, I found that people and what they were experiencing was really happening.
So does your dog know when you're coming home?
Yes, most certainly. Most certainly does, yeah.
No. She probably does know, but she just can't be bothered.
Before the car turns into the corner, and they're up the window.
Dogs have got a sixth sense, definitely, yeah.
Oh yeah, they know when I've got the ump, yeah. They're better behaved when I've got the ump. Yeah.
Well, they know when the difference between when you're taking them out to when you're going out yourself.
It's instinct, isn't it? It's just pure instinct.
It's just a dog thing, isn't it?
To test the theory, we visited my friends Alice and Johnny and their dog Fanny. Thanks, Alice. I didn't do very well at the steering experiment, but maybe a dog will fare better.
Hey, Fanny.
She knows that you've just come to see her.
I thought of you because you definitely mentioned about Fanny being a dog who knows when you or Johnny are coming home.
No, she definitely... There are certain nights when she'll sit and wait for him, and it is unpredictable when he's coming home. She's not going to do it now, I don't think, but she's too bewildered, I think.
What do they do? To the ball? To the ball.
What we'll do is we'll mic you up and then me and Ellis and Georgia will go 5 miles away. So we'll use this thing, and we'll be out, and we'll go. Okay, we'll see what the time is from where we are over there, and hopefully, at the time that we start coming back, the idea is that Fanny may know.
See you later. It's like Challenge Annika with all these cameras.
It's unbelievable. She senses when I have to go to holiday or even to work. And she starts to be very close to me, very attached. And if she sees me preparing the baggage, for example, then she becomes crazy. She wants to be sure I will take her. But it's not all the time that I can take her with me.
Meanwhile, 5 miles away, a quick cuppa in Chiswick, and we're off.
Okay, let's go home.
So we've set off for home, but Fanny doesn't seem to notice. Come back in part 2 to find out if dogs really do know when their owners are coming home. Do you have a pet at all? A dog or a cat?
A duck.
A duck? Yes. Does your duck know when you're coming home, do you think?
Yes.
It does?
Absolutely.
So what does your duck do?
And starts going, like that. And that means that either I or one of my sons is coming home.
We're doing an experiment to see if dogs really do know when their owners are coming home. When we left Fanny, she was in her dog basket. She doesn't seem to be showing much interest in the fact that Ellis, her owner, is coming home. But as we approach the taxi to drive back, something interesting happens.
Talk to you about something.
For the whole of our journey back, Fanny paces up and down to the door. But does she know Ellis is coming home? And if so, how? Or does she just want to go for a walk?
Oh, my shadow, 22. Okay, let's go.
Did she notice?
Twice she went and then she lay in front of the door like she normally does, waiting for me or for Alice. That's entertaining.
I've done these experiments and they support the belief of millions of people who think their dogs can anticipate the arrival of the member of the household, and in some cases they're doing it by a means that seems to be telepathic.
I went to visit my local vet. Does he think that dogs and owners have some kind of special telepathic bond?
I think that the answer is much more subtle and much more interesting than that. Dogs and cats and you and I represent an unbroken chain of genetic material for 3.5 to 4,000 million years. The subtleties of the communication are unfathomable to us because it's just lost in a wealth of evolution. You really need to do sort of double-blind study and do it on a scientific basis. I wonder if it's not more coincidence than telepathy. You and I can't even communicate with women properly. How on earth can we suss out what's going on with the dog? You know what I mean?
As much as I've been enjoying my experiments into the paranormal, my results so far have been a bit disappointing. So I thought I'd up the ante. Why not try a staring experiment with some real experts? We got Austin Go, Britain's first Wing Chun master, to bring some of his students down to the studio to see if they were any better at the staring experiment than me. You either put your hand up to sit like this to say, I think I'm being stared at,
Okay.
yeah? Or you shake your hand like this to say you don't think you're being stared at.
Okay.
For an expert opinion, I asked Peter Jenkins, the author of Advanced Surveillance and a professional private detective. Has he ever noticed the sense of being stared at?
If you're tailing somebody, you don't want to look at them all the time, in case they suddenly turn around, in case they get the sixth sense. They will look around anyway because they're naturally aware if they are up to no good, they're going to be looking about them. They're looking for people like us. So normally rather than watching the back of the head, we watch the feet, because if the feet are there, the rest of them are going to be there. I don't know whether it's the phenomena's there or not, but it's just in case. It could be part of our survival instincts, that we rely on our senses so much. Why shouldn't we have a sixth sense to enable for us to survive?
So that's it. Austin got just above the chance level, 11 out of 20, and John got just below, 9. In the last 7 trials, you were right 6 out of 7 times. So you were definitely warming up.
Do we know who the best starer is?
We don't know who the best starer is. Some people are better at staring than others. I have one friend who's a Los Angeles film producer who's absolutely brilliant at it. I go to restaurants with him. He says, pick anyone you like. And as I pick someone, he stares at them. Within seconds, they turn round. I'm sure if we went on doing it, you'd get better still. Yes,
by training. Okay, then.
Maybe I'm just not doing enough tests. In the Science Museum in Amsterdam, they've conducted 20,000 staring tests. The results are above chance levels, but they have been dismissed by the scientific world as unreliable. Who said being a heretic was easy? I took Sheldrake back to where he grew up to find out about his inspiration.
What I saw was a row of willow trees with wire hanging between them. So I asked my uncle, why is the wire hanging between those trees? And he said, well, we made a fence out of willow stakes, and they came to life. And when I looked, I could see there were these stakes, and they'd just taken root and turned into trees again. And so this power of regeneration in plants was something that fascinated me, and in fact I ended up doing research on at Cambridge. And I think that what we really need in the whole world at the moment is a sense of nature as alive, not just dead and mechanical.
So Sheldrake's theories spring from a belief in nature, a desire to understand what life itself is about. Sheldrake claims we have an energy field surrounding us which connects us to every living thing. And if that sounds too much like New Age claptrap, then let's try an experiment to see if Sheldrake's morphic fields really do exist. For this experiment, I need an amputee who believes they have a phantom limb.
Shortly after my amputation, I could actually feel my left arm where it had been before, even though it wasn't there.
Olaf lost his arm in a motorbike crash at the TT races. His wife Barbara is a Reiki healer who often works without touching the human body. From the other side of a door, can she detect where his phantom limb will be?
And you guess where you think the phantom arm is. The official theory is that the phantom arm is produced inside the brain. It's all in the head, and it's not really out there. I think that there's a field that is actually out there.
When you first tried Reiki on me, you did sense that there was a different energy field.
Completely different.
Over a period of time, my limb has shrunk. The hand, if you can imagine this in mirror, has now moved and attached itself to my stump.
The hand is about that big.
I imagine there'll be a full hand the other side.
Yes. Yeah. So when you're ready to go...
Yeah, we're ready to go.
Okay, when you've done it, Matthias, give a click.
This will give the click.
Sheldrake believes that the strongest forms of telepathy are between people with close bonds. Olaf and Barbara are husband and wife. But can she tell that his phantom hand is currently sticking out of panel number 6?
Three. 5. 2. 3.
Okay.
I had no sensation of being touched or even putting my phantom limb through the door. I had no sensation of that at all.
So we're 1 out of 12 here. So what did you feel, Barbara?
All I could feel was just too much heat here, and I thought it might be the lights. I wasn't able to distinguish.
Do you do any subtle energy medicine or anything of that?
Yeah,
Anthony is an ex-soldier who is now a healer. He also works without touching the body. Will he fare any better than Barbara?
Of the number, or your thoughts are elsewhere, like I want a banana?
I'm not going to give you any clues.
Okay, fine. 6, 5, 2, 4, 2, 1.
Okay, thank you.
I can actually feel,
2,
effectively,
4,
as though my
4,
phantom would be the other side of the door. Strange, eh?
Well, that's 6. The chance level's 2.
Okay.
That's actually statistically significant. That's phenomenal, actually. I mean, that's an amazing score and under these conditions.
What I've been told so far is that whatever you sense in your phantom limb is in your mind. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. I think Dr. Sheldrake has something with this. But whether he or anybody else can actually prove there is a physical, metaphysical, call it what you will, force around or surrounding a phantom limb, I couldn't say. But I think it's certainly worth looking into.
If you had your eyes closed and Barbara put her hand where your phantom is, as it were, touching your phantom,
Yes,
and whether
yeah.
you'd be able to feel it.
That'd be an interesting experiment. We could try that.
Yes.
We could certainly try that.
I mean, that's the kind of thing, do try this at home. I mean, you couldn't really try it anywhere else, could you? People would think you were quite mad. But,
So at last, success. Though of course I'd need to do hundreds of tests to really prove it. And most scientists would think I'm barmy, even for trying. But maybe that's about to change. Because like the willow trees which inspired him, Sheldrake's own career is undergoing something of a regeneration. In September 2005, he was awarded £100,000 for research. And as the winner of this Perrott Warwick Scholarship, he is based in his old stamping ground, Trinity College, Cambridge.
for 25 years I've had to fund my research as best I could. Now I have some official support. And yes, that certainly makes life easier.
And the fact that it's Cambridge again?
Well, that's nice, yes. I mean, I wouldn't object if Oxford had paid me, or any other university for that matter, but it's very nice it's Cambridge.
Maybe Sheldrake's experiments in Cambridge will go some way to proving these phenomena exist, but I doubt the scientific establishment will ever believe him. In the coming years, conventional science may have an explanation for all of this, but that's just a matter of belief too, isn't it? For me, the science world will be a lot more boring without heretics like Sheldrake around. And in years to come, who knows? Science may yet thank him.